The rain had stopped hours ago, but the sidewalks still shimmered like bruised glass under the city's amber lights. Cars hissed by outside the lounge's tall windows, their reflections stretching and warping in the wet pavement. Inside, warmth pulsed from dark wood, gold fixtures, and low jazz. An atmosphere so carefully designed it made Natalie feel like an intruder in her own life. She sat at the far end of the bar, the sleeves of her blazer pushed up, revealing the faint mark where her wedding ring used to be. The divorce papers were tucked in her bag, signed an hour ago at a sterile office with white walls and a receptionist who barely looked up. The notary had smiled politely, stamped the seal, and just like that, 12 years of marriage vanished into a legal envelope. She wasn't sure why she'd come here. The Crimson Room was upscale, elegant soft music, expensive scotch, quiet conversation. It wasn't the kind of place people came to cry, but here she was, swirling her second glass of bourbon and staring at the empty chair beside her like it held answers she couldn't reach. Her phone buzzed again. Marcus. She didn't have to look at the screen to know. She could already hear his voice in the back of her mind, low, cold, rehearsed. You pushed me away. I didn't have a choice. Another message, then another. The previous ones had ranged from sad to cruel. You were always too busy with work. We were just existing. I didn't mean to fall for someone else. Tonight's were just more echoes. She set the phone face down. A martini glass clinked nearby. Laughter rose briefly from a couple seated 2 stools down, young, glowing, magnetic. The kind of love that hadn't yet tasted resentment. Natalie watched them, unable to remember the last time she'd looked at someone like that. She used to believe in love that healed. Now she only believed in distraction. The bartender, a silver-haired man with a patient smile, offered a gentle nod. Same again? Natalie hesitated, then nodded. Make it a double. As the next drink arrived, a familiar voice cut through the music. You know what your problem is? Melissa slid into the chair beside her, shaking out her rain-damp curls. You grieve with high-end whiskey and low standards for company. Natalie managed a tired smile. You track me. You're predictable, Melissa said, waving the bartender for a drink of her own. After paperwork like that, you were either going to be at home crying or here pretending not to. Natalie stared into her glass. I didn't think it would hurt this much. I thought I was done hurting. You're not done, Melissa said gently, but maybe you can stop punishing yourself for one night. Come dance. Come forget. Natalie hesitated. She didn't want to dance. She didn't want to move. She wanted to slip into nothingness, to feel warm and numb and quiet. But Melissa took her hand anyway, guiding her toward the lounge's back room where a small jazz band played behind velvet curtains. The music was slow, like memory. The kind that makes you sway even when you don't mean to. Natalie let herself be pulled into it, one drink, then another. She laughed at things she couldn't recall, smiled at strangers. Her limbs grew lighter. Her pain didn't disappear, but it blurred. At some point, the floor tilted. Her vision narrowed. Lights smudged into stars. The last thing she remembered was stumbling toward the exit, heels clicking, the world spinning, the rain returning. A hand caught her elbow. A voice low, concern cut through the haze. Hey, are you all right? Then everything went dark. The first thing she registered was the scent. Clean linen. Something rich, cedarwood maybe, or bergamot. A warm, masculine smell she didn't recognize. It clung to the pillow beneath her cheek, unfamiliar and soothing. Then came the second realization this wasn't her bed. Natalie sat up too quickly and immediately regretted it. A sharp pulse surged through her head like a drumbeat, and her stomach gave a slow, nauseating lurch. Her eyes darted around the space. The room was massive, modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over a city skyline, still blurred by morning fog. The sheets wrapped around her were silk, undeniably expensive. A charcoal gray robe lay folded at the edge of the bed. Everything in the room whispered wealth. Her clothes were neatly folded on a velvet chair near the closet. Her phone rested on the nightstand, plugged into a charger she didn't own, and her black heels, still damp from the rain, were placed side by side at the foot of the bed. Nothing was out of place, nothing was violated, but the question still clawed at her spine. Whose bed am I in? Just as she swung her legs over the edge of the mattress, the bedroom door opened. A man stood there holding a steaming cup of coffee in one hand and a navy towel slung over his shoulder. He was barefoot, wearing a black t-shirt and slate-colored joggers, his damp hair pushed back, tall, lean, and strikingly handsome in that unapproachable way, like someone carved out of quiet power and deliberate restraint. He stopped when he saw her sitting up. "You're awake." Natalie froze. Her mind scrambled to put the pieces together. But nothing came. What happened last night? He stepped inside and set the coffee down gently on the side table. "You were in pretty bad shape when you left the lounge. Stumbled out into the street without your coat. Your friend disappeared into a car, didn't even see you leave. You could barely stand. I recognized you from earlier at the bar. I offered to get you a cab, but you passed out." Natalie's face flushed with shame. "Oh God." He sat down on the chair across from her, maintaining a careful distance. "I didn't know your address, and I didn't want to hand you over to some driver who might take advantage. So I brought you here. You slept. Nothing else happened." His voice was calm, even. It wasn't a voice that needed to convince. It simply stated the truth. Still, Natalie couldn't help but feel her insides coil. "Thank you," she said softly. "That was incredibly kind. And also, I'm really embarrassed." "Don't be," he replied. Standing again, "You're not the first person to fall apart in that lounge. The place thrives on broken hearts." "What's your name?" she asked. Finally, he gave a small smile. "Lucas." "Lucas?" He hesitated for a fraction too long. "Blackwood." Natalie blinked. The name stirred something. Blackwood. It couldn't be that Blackwood, could it? As in Blackwood Innovations? He gave a small nod, almost apologetically, as if he didn't enjoy saying yes. "Jesus," she whispered. Lucas turned to the window and crossed his arms, looking out. "I didn't bring you here for any reason other than to make sure you were safe. Believe that or don't, but I don't chase people in bars. I build server farms and avoid people." Natalie studied his profile. There was something heavy in the way he stood, like he carried a weight most people couldn't see. "I believe you," she said quietly, "and I'm sorry if I ruined your night." He turned back, finally meeting her eyes. "You didn't ruin anything." The silence between them held something strangely gentle, like an unspoken truth neither of them was ready to unwrap. She reached for the coffee and took a slow sip, grateful for the warmth, grateful for him. But outside, beyond the glass and the soft hum of morning, something stirred. Her phone vibrated again on the nightstand. Another message from Marcus. This one said, "You'll regret what you did last night." Her blood ran cold. She hadn't told Marcus where she'd gone, hadn't posted anything, hadn't even called him. So how did he know? The screen pulsed with the message as if it were alive, and for a long moment Natalie just stared. Her breath caught between her ribs. "You'll regret what you did last night." Her hands trembled. She set the phone down slowly, not answering, not yet. Lucas watched her carefully from the window, his arms crossed, the morning light casting silver across his dark hair. She didn't tell him, not yet. Instead, she forced a tight smile and lifted the coffee to her lips again, trying to bury the rising dread behind caffeine and civility. "You have a charger I can borrow for a bit?" she asked, her voice carefully casual. "I should, probably, call my friend Melissa. Let her know I'm okay." Lucas nodded. "Already plugged your phone in. Feel free to use anything you need." "Thanks," she said, rising to her feet. Her head throbbed faintly with every movement, but her balance held. She walked slowly toward the folded clothes, dressed without comment, and stepped into the hallway outside the bedroom. His penthouse was beautiful, yes, but also silent. Painfully so, every room immaculate, every corner carefully curated, like someone lived here without ever really living in it. As she passed the dining area, she noticed a framed photo on the far credenza. 2 children, Lucas and a girl maybe, 13, 14, both laughing, holding dripping popsicles. The frame had dust on its edge. Untouched. She returned to the bedroom doorway, her voice soft. "Who's the girl in the photo?" Lucas looked up. A flicker passed through his eyes. "My sister, Evelyn." The name hung there for a beat too long. "I lost her 5 years ago," he added, Then nothing more. Just silence. Natalie nodded. I'm sorry. Thanks. She lingered in the doorway a moment longer, unsure if she was intruding or welcome, unsure of anything at all, except that Marcus's text hadn't come from nowhere. By 10:04 a.m., she was in a cab heading back toward her apartment. Lucas had offered to call a car, but she needed space, air, clarity, and her thoughts had begun unraveling like a thread caught on a nail. Her mind reeled with the possibilities. She hadn't texted Marcus, hadn't called. So how did he know? Someone must have seen her. But who? Then a thought slashed through her. Melissa. Melissa had been at the lounge, had seen her drink, had watched her leave. And when Natalie had stumbled out into the rain, there had been a black car waiting. Not hers. Not a cab. Someone else's. Melissa had seen her go with Lucas. Natalie reached her apartment building, paid the driver, and climbed the stairs with shaking legs. The moment she stepped inside, her phone buzzed again, this time, not from Marcus. It was a voicemail from Melissa. Natalie hesitated before pressing play. Hey, just checking to make sure you're still alive, Melissa said, laughing brightly. You kind of ghosted out last night, and I figured maybe you went home with someone. Or got rescued by a billionaire. Wouldn't that be something? The message ended with a click. But something about the tone, it wasn't worry. It wasn't casual. It was calculated. Natalie sank into her couch, staring out the window. The city buzzed below like nothing had changed, but something had. And it wasn't just about Marcus. Someone knew she had been with Lucas, and someone wanted to use that. She was barely halfway through processing the thought when her phone rang. Again, this time it was an unknown number. She picked up. Double quotes, Ms. Hart. The voice was crisp. Male. This is Detective Nash from the downtown precinct. I'm calling to ask a few questions regarding an incident at the Crimson Room last night. Your name came up in a report. Natalie felt her mouth go dry. Incident. A man named Thomas Winters, bartender, on duty, filed a statement saying he saw you leave in a severely intoxicated state, accompanied by Lucas Blackwood. He reported concerns for your safety. There's a formal inquiry being launched. Natalie's blood turned to ice. Lucas, the man who had helped her, the only person who hadn't judged her or taken advantage of her vulnerability, was now being dragged into some twisted accusation. And the worst part was, she knew exactly who had orchestrated it. Marcus. He had always been strategic, always knew how to weaponize perception. And now, he'd found a way to paint her as the reckless ex-wife and Lucas as the predator. As if the humiliation of the divorce wasn't enough, now she was at the center of a scandal. Except Natalie wasn't the same woman who had cried through mediation meetings and signed her name with trembling hands. She stood now, and she whispered to herself, like a promise, if they want a story, they're going to get one. But it's going to be mine. The air in Natalie's apartment felt too still, too clean, like it had been scrubbed of warmth while she was gone. She paced the floor, phone in hand, heart thrumming like a war drum in her chest. Detective Nash's call had ended 15 minutes ago, but its impact still echoed. Lucas Blackwood was being investigated for misconduct. Because of her. Because someone had seen an opportunity to twist a good man's act of decency into something dark, and she knew exactly who had planted the seed. Marcus, the man who once held her in the glow of candlelight, now wielded truth like a weapon, bending it until it snapped. The man who had sworn to love her through sickness and silence, and shame had become the architect of her ruin. She opened her laptop and began typing, not an email, not a message, notes, connections, times, names. She listed everything she remembered about that night: the drinks, the rain, Melissa disappearing, Lucas finding her in the street, the layout of the lounge, the bartender's name, Thomas Winters. Then she opened another window. Searched Lucas Blackwood scandal. Nothing. Clean. Not a single smear. He was wealthy, yes, but elusive. Interviews were rare. Press coverage minimal. He guarded his life like a fortress. Until now. A knock shattered her thoughts. Sharp, urgent. Natalie froze. Another knock, louder this time. She approached the door cautiously and peered through the peephole. Melissa. She hesitated, then opened it. Finally, Melissa said, brushing past her into the apartment uninvited. She wore designer sunglasses despite the overcast sky, and her lips were painted in a shade too bright for morning. What are you doing here?" Natalie asked, voice low. Melissa pulled off her glasses, scanning the room. "Just checking in on my favorite ex-wife. Saw the news." Natalie's stomach dropped. "What news?" Melissa raised a perfectly arched brow. Lucas Blackwood. Headlines. "This morning, tech billionaire accused of misconduct after bar incident. Your name's not in it yet, but it's only a matter of time." Natalie's mind reeled. She hadn't checked the news, hadn't imagined it would spread this fast. "You knew this was coming." Melissa tilted her head. "You really think your ex wouldn't keep tabs on you? Especially after seeing you leave with the most eligible bachelor in Manhattan. He's not jealous, Nat. He's strategic. He doesn't care about you, he cares about reputation. And you gave him the perfect tool." Natalie stared at her. "And what do you care about, Mel?" Melissa smiled coldly. "Truth. I care about not being dragged down with you. I've worked hard to build my network, my reputation. If this turns into a circus, I need to distance myself. You understand? Get out," Natalie said, her voice trembling, but steady. Melissa hesitated, then slipped her sunglasses back on. "Suit yourself. Just remember who warned you." The door slammed shut behind her like the final beat of a gavel. Natalie stood in the quiet, shaking, not with fear but with fire. She opened her phone and dialed Lucas's number. His voice answered after the third ring, deep and tight. "Natalie, I need to see you," she said. "Now." Silence on the other end. "Then, I'll send a car." 20 minutes later, she stepped into the black sedan parked outside her building. No one spoke as it pulled away, weaving through the city like a shadow. When it stopped in front of Blackwood Tower, a private elevator already waited, the doors parting without sound. She ascended in silence, alone, when the doors opened. Lucas stood waiting at the end of the hallway. He looked exhausted, his jaw tight, eyes bruised with fatigue, suit jacket gone, sleeves rolled up like he was done pretending everything was fine. She walked past the marble floors and soft lights until they stood face to face. "I didn't do anything," he said, before she could speak. "You know that, right?" "I know," she said, voice breaking. He turned away, pacing. "But they don't. Board's already panicking. Sponsors pulling out of next month's summit. And I don't care about that, not really. What I care about is they're using you to get to me, and it's working." Natalie swallowed hard. "It's Marcus." Lucas stilled. "Your ex? He has friends, connections, and I think Melissa helped him. She was at the lounge. She saw us. She's feeding him information, and now I'm the perfect distraction while he wipes out what's left of my name." Lucas turned slowly, something dangerous flashing behind his eyes, not anger at her but at the injustice. "Then we take it back." She blinked. "What? Your reputation. Mine. Your future. I've spent my life protecting my name from shadows. Now they're coming for yours, and I won't let that happen." "Lucas," her voice broke, "you don't owe me anything." He stepped closer, his voice low and powerful. "Don't mistake this for charity. I'm not doing this because I feel sorry for you. I'm doing it because I believe you. Because you're the first person in years who's walked into my world and made me feel something. That wasn't cynicism. And because the people trying to destroy you are the same kind of people who buried my sister." The words stopped her cold. Lucas saw the question in her eyes and nodded. Evelyn wasn't an overdose, not really. It was manipulation, power, lies. People crushed her from the inside out, and then acted like they didn't notice when she shattered. "I didn't fight for her when I should have, but I'll fight for you." Natalie's throat tightened. "How?" "By doing the one thing they never expect," he said, "telling the truth, in the spotlight, on our terms." She stared at him. "You want to go public?" she asked. Lucas gave a grim smile. "If they want a scandal, let's give them a story. They can't twist one where we're not victims, but fire." For the first time in weeks, Natalie felt her spine straighten with something other than survival. Hope. Not just in him, but in herself. Lucas Blackwood's name was a fortress, untouchable, unchallenged, a monolith carved into the skyline of the city itself. But over the next 48 hours, that name began to fracture, And Natalie Hart's name, it was nowhere to be found. Not in the article headlines, not in the whispered boardroom rumors, not even in the slick online think pieces about billionaire behavior and blurred lines. She had been erased from the story she was shoved into, like she never mattered, like she never existed. But Lucas hadn't forgotten, not when the media flooded his inbox with requests for statements, not when his legal team begged him to wait it out, not when his own board men and women he'd trusted for years suggested it might be best to settle and disappear. No, Lucas remembered every moment of that night, the rain, her tears, the way she looked too proud to fall but too tired to keep standing. He remembered Evelyn. He remembered what silence had cost him. So on Monday morning, he did the unthinkable. He called a press conference. Natalie stood beside him in the private elevator, staring at her reflection in the mirrored walls. She looked calm, polished, but inside, her heart thundered. Her reputation was already splintered from the divorce. She had no PR team, no crisis consultants, just one black suit, one clear voice, and a man beside her who was about to risk everything. As they exited into the conference hall, the chaos was immediate. Reporters, cameras, flashing lights. Voices barked questions, some harsh, some curious, others cruel. Lucas raised a hand, and the room silenced, like magic. He stepped to the podium, no teleprompter, no notes, just him. "Good morning," he said. "I'm Lucas Blackwood. Over the past 72 hours, my name has appeared in dozens of articles. Most of them contain 1 part truth and 9 parts narrative." He glanced at Natalie, then back to the room. "So let me give you the truth." Natalie's chest tightened. This was it. "On Friday night," Lucas said, "I helped a woman who was in distress. She was alone, vulnerable, and being ignored by everyone around her. I did what any human being should have done. I made sure she got home safely. That woman is Natalie Hart." Murmurs rippled through the room. Her name dropped like a stone into still water. Lucas continued. "There was no misconduct, no coercion, nothing inappropriate, only decency. Something that seems to be in short supply." A reporter shouted, "Mr. Blackwood, are you confirming a relationship with Miss Hart?" Lucas paused, looked directly into the camera. "Yes," he said, "not because she needs my protection, but because she deserves my respect, and because I've fallen in love with her." The air was sucked out of the room. Natalie nearly stumbled. Even though she had suspected hope, nothing prepared her for hearing him say it aloud. "Not like this, not to the world." Lucas turned to her, extended a hand, and in that moment, she understood exactly what he was doing. He wasn't saving her. He was standing beside her, giving her the floor. She stepped forward. "I didn't ask for the spotlight," she said. Her voice, though soft, rang with clarity. "I've never dated a billionaire before. I've never been on this kind of stage. But what I have done is rebuild my life after a divorce that tried to convince me I was worthless. I've made mistakes. I've fallen. But I've also learned how to rise." She looked directly into the sea of flashing cameras. "You can write your stories. You can speculate. But know this: I am not a victim, and Lucas Blackwood is not my villain. We're just a people who met on a night when we both needed saving." The room was stunned silent for a moment. Then the questions erupted again, louder than before. But they didn't matter now. Lucas touched her back, guiding her away from the podium. The conference was over. The truth had been spoken. Back in the elevator, away from the chaos, Natalie finally exhaled. "You told the world you loved me," she said, still dazed. Lucas leaned in, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I told the world what I should have told you first, and you meant it, every word." Natalie closed her eyes for a beat, letting it land, letting it breathe. Then her phone buzzed again. A new message. "We're not done, sweetheart." This one wasn't from Marcus. This time, it was from an unknown number. And beneath it, an attachment. A photo, grainy, shadowy. Natalie, Lucas, the hallway. His hand on her back, taken from behind a door. Someone had been watching. The scandal wasn't over. It was just beginning. Natalie stared at the screen like it might catch fire in her hands. The photo glared back at her, fuzzy but unmistakable. It was her and Lucas in the hallway just moments ago, his hand resting gently on her back. The angle was low, discreet, shot from behind a partially open door. Someone had been watching them, someone inside Blackwood Tower. Her fingers trembled as she tapped the sender's profile. No name, just a string of random numbers. Her stomach turned underneath the image. One line glowed like acid against the screen. You don't know who you're dealing with. The elevator hummed softly round them, still descending. The silence between her and Lucas thick and fragile. She turned the phone toward him, his jaw clenched. Where did this come from? Unknown number. It came in right after the press conference. She tried to steady her voice, but the knot in her chest twisted tighter. Lucas, someone's inside. Someone with access. I have over 100 employees on this floor, he said, his voice cold now, calculating. But only 5 people know the restricted elevator code, and 3 of them were in that press room. He pulled his own phone from his pocket and began typing. Natalie watched his face harden, his eyes scanning fast like he was assembling a chessboard in his mind. She saw it then. Not just the brilliance, but the edge. Lucas Blackwood wasn't just a tech mogul. He was a tactician, and someone had just declared war on his home turf. Whoever sent this wants to scare you, he said, his voice low, or isolate you. Maybe both. And if it's Marcus again, she whispered, if he's working through someone else. Now Lucas met her gaze. Then we find out who, and we burn it down. The elevator doors opened to a private parking level. His driver nodded from across the garage, but Lucas waved him off. We're taking my car. His car was a matte, black Aston Martin, sleek and quiet as it slid through city traffic. Natalie clutched her bag on her lap, her thoughts spinning faster than the lights outside. She kept checking her phone. No new messages, no answers. Just the lingering threat. You don't know who you're dealing with. She did know, though, or she was beginning to, because it wasn't just Marcus anymore. This was bigger, more calculated, and it was time to stop being afraid. They reached her apartment, but Lucas didn't pull away after she got out. I'm having my team scan your phone, he said through the open window. Don't answer any messages until then. And tonight, you don't stay here alone, Lucas. I'll have someone posted out front if you insist on sleeping here. But I'd rather you come back with me, where I know you're safe. She hesitated, then nodded. 15 minutes later, they were back in his penthouse. But this time, something had changed. The lights were dimmed. The windows were dark. The usual warmth had vanished. It felt like the space was holding its breath. His phone rang. He answered it quickly, listened, then stiffened. You're sure? A pause. Okay. Send me everything. Now. He hung up and turned to her. The photo was taken by a security feed we didn't know had been rerouted. Someone created a duplicate server, offsite. They've been recording us tracking my internal system without tripping a single alert. That takes skill. Natalie felt her heart seize. How long have they been watching? Weeks, he said. Maybe longer. Her mouth went dry. Why? Lucas stepped closer, and the fire in his eyes returned. Because someone wants to destroy me from the inside. And now they've decided to use you to do it. But why me? You're not just anything. He cut in, fierce now. You're the variable, the one thing they didn't plan for. The one person I let in. A sharp knock on the penthouse door silenced them both. Lucas reached for the hidden drawer near the kitchen counter and retrieved something Natalie hadn't expected to see, a gun. Stay here, he said, and moved toward the door with deliberate calm. Natalie's breath caught. Her mind spiraled. Who could it be now? Police, press, worse. Lucas looked through the security camera, then opened the door. A woman stood on the threshold. Mid-30s, polished, confident, her expression unreadable. Hello, Lucas, she said. He tensed. Leona. Natalie stepped into view. And you? Must be Natalie, the woman added with a small smile. Lucas's voice was low. She's an intelligence consultant. She used to work for the CIA. And she's also my ex. Natalie felt the ground shift beneath her again. Leona stepped into the penthouse as if she still owned part of it. You're in trouble, Lucas, she said calmly, and I'm here to help. Because whoever's coming for you now, they're not interested in headlines. They want something else. And if you don't figure it out fast, You're going to lose everything." Lucas didn't blink, then start talking. And Natalie, she didn't know who to trust anymore. But she knew one thing. She wasn't running again. Not this time. Natalie sat perfectly still as the ex-CIA agent crossed the penthouse threshold. Like a ghost returning to unfinished business, Leona Reynolds had the kind of presence that filled a room before her voice even did, confident, elegant, dangerous in a way that felt quiet and earned. She wore a tailored navy coat that still dripped faintly from the rain and carried a leather folder tucked under one arm. The moment she entered, the temperature seemed to drop by 5 degrees. Lucas's jaw was rigid, his posture carved from stone. He closed the door behind her and locked it, but not before scanning the hallway with a cold, calculating glance. "I don't remember asking for your help," he said. "You didn't," Leona replied coolly, shedding her coat and draping it over the back of a chair like she owned the space. "But you've drawn the kind of attention you can't afford. And I've never been good at sitting on the sidelines when people I once cared about are walking straight into fire." "I'm not in fire," Lucas said. "I'm in control." Leona cocked her head. "You were, until a private video feed inside your secure tower got hijacked. Until your name hit the press in a story you didn't authorize. Until someone with a grudge decided to make her." She gestured at Natalie. Without even looking, the pawn. Natalie didn't flinch, not even when Lucas turned to her, as if to gauge whether she felt offended. She didn't. Leona hadn't. Said it with cruelty, just precision, like stating the weather. But Natalie wasn't a pawn. Not anymore. "Whoever's doing this," Natalie said, "they know everything, not just about Lucas. About me, my past, my divorce, Marcus, Melissa, all of it." "You're not wrong," Leona said, finally looking at her. "But you're thinking too small. This isn't just your ex or a jealous co-worker. This is deeper, wider. Someone's been laying groundwork for months, maybe years." She opened the folder on the kitchen island and spread out several sheets, screenshots, code, maps, digital diagrams. "This," she said, pointing to a complex tree of access points, "is a spider web. Your servers have been breached in at least 6 locations. The routing patterns show someone with high-level intel, not just in tech, but in behavioral manipulation. Someone who understands how to leak just enough to trigger panic, but not enough to get caught." Lucas leaned over the diagrams, his brow furrowed. "This wasn't just about stealing data. No," Leona said, "this is psychological warfare. And the center of the strategy isn't the company, it's you. And now her." Natalie swallowed. "What do they want?" Leona looked at her. "To isolate you, to discredit you, to make you implode before they even strike." Lucas exhaled sharply. "So what's the play?" "We bait them," Leona said. "We let them believe they've already won. And then we expose them. All of them." Natalie stepped closer. "What do you need from me?" Leona gave her a long look, as if assessing something beneath the surface. "Your memory, your timeline, everything you've seen, every instinct you didn't trust, and access to every device Marcus ever gave you." Natalie nodded. "Done." For the next 2 hours, the 3 of them sat in a quiet storm of strategy. They mapped out dates, passwords, threats, suspicious conversations. Leona moved like a hunter, connecting dots, laying traps. Lucas moved like a commander, adapting, building, anticipating. And Natalie, she was no longer the woman who cried in the bathroom after her final signature on the divorce. She was the spark now, the threat they hadn't expected. At 3:14 a.m., Leona stood. "They'll strike again soon. They always do." Your press conference gave them urgency. Someone's going to make a mistake. As she gathered her things, she turned to Natalie. "You have a choice. Stay here and play defense, or come with me tomorrow and help me dig through the bones of this war." Natalie didn't hesitate. "I'm coming." "Good," Leona said with the ghost of a smile. "You've got teeth. That'll scare them." After she left, Lucas poured them both whiskey, the silence between them thick but no longer brittle. "Do you trust her?" Natalie asked quietly. Lucas stared at the amber swirl in his glass. "I trust what she can do, but not who she is once," he said. "But she's a mirror. She only shows you what you want to see." Natalie looked at him. "And what did she show you?" Lucas met her gaze, tired and honest. "Control." until you showed me what it means to care." He set his glass down and walked over, placing a hand gently on her cheek. "You don't have to fight this with me. I'm not fighting with you," she said softly. "I'm fighting for me." His mouth touched hers, a slow and broken kind of kiss. Not passionate, not desperate, just real, steady, grounding. But when she closed her eyes, her mind drifted to one line: "You don't know who you're dealing with," because she was starting to wonder, what if she didn't know either? What if this wasn't just about revenge or sabotage? What if she was tangled in something much darker? Something that had never been about her marriage or Lucas's reputation, but about a secret so deeply buried, someone was willing to burn everything down to keep it hidden. The morning arrived like a loaded gun. Rain lashed the city in sideways sheets, blurring traffic lights and soaking pavement, casting the skyline in a wash of steel and fire. Inside Lucas's penthouse, the world was unnaturally still, as if the storm knew something was coming and had taken a breath to witness it. Natalie sat at the edge of the couch, tying her boots with shaking fingers, her jaw clenched with a focus she hadn't known she possessed until now. No makeup, no jewelry, just her, stripped of pretense and armor, and ready to walk into the shadows of a truth that had followed her for far too long. Lucas appeared behind her, dressed in dark tactical gray, not a thread of his usual tailored elegance. His expression was unreadable. In his hand, he held a flash drive. "Leona's meeting us at an off-grid intel house near Brooklyn Bridge. Untraceable location. Encrypted servers. But we only have a few hours to move before the next leak drops." Natalie looked up. "Another leak?" He nodded grimly. "This time they're targeting your financial records, trying to link you to embezzlement through one of my shell companies. And the worst part, the paperwork is almost perfect. It looks like you siphoned funds from my own account." Her mouth went dry. "So now they're making me your thief. They're painting you as a manipulator," Lucas said, handing her a coat. "A social climber who seduced me, infiltrated my empire, and is now bleeding me dry. They want you to look like the predator and me the fool." Natalie felt the air thicken with disbelief, but only for a moment. It made sense now. The anonymous messages, the shadow photos, the eerie silence in the media before the storm. Someone wasn't just trying to ruin her. They were scripting her destruction like a screenplay, feeding it to the world one act at a time. And she was done letting them. Lucas's driver took them through back streets and alleys, avoiding public surveillance routes. When they arrived at the safe house, a worn brick building disguised as an abandoned antique shop, Leona was already inside, working across for monitors, her eyes dancing between code strings and heat-mapped network trails. "They've been watching you both from 3 endpoints," she said without looking up. "But this morning they slipped. The second packet of leaked financials was sent through a masking IP that pinged back to an office inside Cross Industries." Lucas swore under his breath. "Your own company?" Natalie asked. "We're being dismantled from the inside," Leona said. "And I have a theory." She clicked a few keys. A photo bloomed on the screen. Natalie's breath caught. "No," she whispered. The image was clear: Marcus, her ex-husband, standing in an elevator lobby, badge in hand. But not at Cross Industries. This was another building, one she recognized vaguely. "Where is that?" she asked. "Midtown," Lucas said slowly. "Headquarters of Cetera Equity Group, one of our largest silent investors. I've never met the board personally. They bought in during our second expansion. That's where he works now," Natalie said. "After the divorce, he joined Cetera. He said it was a fresh start." Leona turned, arms crossed. "He lied. Marcus didn't join them. He was placed there. And now we think he's working with someone deeper. Someone who's been orchestrating this from the shadows for years." Lucas's face was like stone. "Who?" Leona hesitated. "Your former mentor, Everett Morrow." Lucas went still, deadly still. "You're wrong," he said. "Morrow died 3 years ago." "He faked his death," Leona said. "And Cetera, it's his. He's been building a network of shadow companies, data harvest fronts, blackmail systems. And Natalie, you're the perfect vector, not because of who you are, but because of who you used to be." The room spun. What are you talking about?" Natalie said. I've never met Morrow in my life. Leona pulled out a sealed file, slid it across the table. Inside were photos. Natalie, 15 years younger, in a university library, walking into a symposium, attending an internship. Nothing unusual until one photo showed her standing beside a smiling man with silver hair, his hand on her shoulder. Everett Morrow. I don't remember this, she whispered. You were recruited for a summer program under a different name. Morrow ran covert behavioral studies under the guise of innovation labs. You didn't know what you were part of, but he never forgot you. Why me? Because you're persuasive, empathic, sharp. You made people believe in impossible things. You were supposed to be part of his behavioral programming team, but you left. And when you disappeared, when you became invisible in your marriage, he lost track of you. Leona paused until you fell into Lucas's orbit. Then he saw you again and realized he could use your pain to collapse Lucas from within. Natalie stared at the file, bile rising in her throat. It wasn't just sabotage. It wasn't just revenge. It was a game, a psychological experiment. She was a pawn in a machine that had been watching her since she was 19. So what now? She asked. Leona's eyes narrowed. Now we break the cycle. We expose Morrow, pull the teeth from this entire operation. Lucas stepped beside her, slipping his hand into hers. But we do it together, he said. Natalie nodded slowly, and for the first time in weeks, the fear didn't paralyze her, it sharpened her. Then let's give him what he wants, she said. But on our terms. Leona smirked. You're catching on. As the rain pounded the safe house roof, the war entered its final act. And this time, Natalie Hart wasn't running from her past. She was running straight into it with fire in her eyes. The rain finally stopped, but the city didn't breathe. It held its pulse just below the skin, a hum of anticipation in every streetlight flicker, every subway grumble, every glass building casting reflections of people who wore masks even when they smiled. Inside a towering studio loft repurposed into a war room, Natalie stood at a wide table, a corkboard in front of her covered in photographs, diagrams, and red strings looping like arteries. She pinned a new image to the center, a blurry frame from a grainy surveillance feed, showing Everett Morrow stepping into the lobby of Cetera Equity, flanked by two assistants, their faces obscured. He looked older than the last photo she'd seen, but not weak. He was sharp, aware, calculating, the architect of her unraveling. He's already started phase 3, Leona said from the corner, eyes glued to a tablet. False accounting leaks hit to foreign subsidiaries of Blackwood Innovations this morning. Our sell-off wiped nearly 80 million off your market cap. Lucas. Double quotes. Lucas didn't flinch. He leaned forward, palms flat on the table. What's phase 4? Leona looked up, grim. Destruction. Personal, public, final. He wants us humiliated before he finishes the kill, Natalie said, her voice steady. He doesn't just want to take the company. He wants to erase our credibility and your history, Leona added. Everything that made you dangerous to him. Natalie stared at the photos. I want to face him. Lucas turned. Natalie, that's not. I want to look him in the eye, she said. If he's been watching me since I was 19, using me, tracking me, then he deserves to know that the little girl he tried to erase grew up with sharper teeth than he ever imagined. Leona didn't smile often, but now she did. We can use that. By afternoon, the plan was set. Natalie would be the bait. A staged interview. Exclusive, carefully leaked. A sit-down with a fictional journalist at a controlled venue, announcing a personal memoir detailing her affair with Lucas and the corporate abuse she allegedly endured. A story designed to lure Morrow and trigger him, make him show his hand. Lucas would monitor from a shadowed floor above, a live security feed and team ready. Leona's people swept the building, bugged the perimeter, tapped the power grid. He won't be able to help himself, Leona said. Narcissists never can. You've disobeyed his script. You made yourself the protagonist. But beneath the strategy and the confidence, Natalie felt a storm roiling inside her. She hadn't just been targeted, she'd been studied. By someone who thought emotions were vulnerabilities, who believed grief made people weak, who turned pain into leverage. But he had made one fatal miscalculation. He forgot that pain, in the right hands, becomes power. Asterisk asterisk, the interview was set in a private rooftop lounge of a shuttered hotel in Soho. Glass walls, black marble floors, thick leather chairs, a place of luxury and secrecy. The fake journalist Leona's assets at opposite Natalie. Cameras rolling, the scene broadcast live to one device, a laptop rigged in the server room below, monitored by Lucas and Leona's cyber team. Natalie wore black, her hair pulled back, her expression soft but unreadable. So, the journalist asked, reading from a pre-scripted card, "You're saying you never loved Lucas Blackwood?" A pause. Then Natalie said, clearly, "I'm saying love was never the plan. But the pain he brought me, it taught me how to survive." Lucas's heart pounded in the control room. The line wasn't scripted. She was improvising. And it was brilliant. 5 minutes later, a message appeared on Leona's screen. User single quotes m.ev. Morrow attempting to override stream access. Trace initiated. Leona leaned forward. "He's here. Asterisk asterisk at precisely 6:40 p.m. The elevator dinged in the lobby. A tall man in a dark coat entered the lounge, flanked by 2 younger men with blank expressions. Everett Morrow looked around the room like a director entering a soundstage. His eyes landed on Natalie. And he smiled. "You've grown," he said calmly, as if greeting a long-lost daughter. "When I saw you stumble through that bar a few weeks ago, I wondered how long it would take you to wake up." Natalie didn't blink. "I wasn't asleep. I was grieving. And now I'm done, are you?" he asked. "Do you know how many stories I've written like yours? The betrayed, the discarded, the underestimated. You're all the same. Tragic. Women who think they've found power in pain." He took a step closer. "But power," he said, "requires control. Then you're going to hate what happens next." Natalie replied. Lights surged. Cameras stopped. The fake journalist vanished behind a wall panel. Doors locked. Leona's voice crackled over the speaker. "Mr. Morrow, this is a recorded perimeter. You're under investigation for corporate espionage, wire fraud, and manipulation of federal security systems. Step away from the woman." Morrow's smirk cracked. "You think this ends me?" he said, turning toward the glass. "You think a camera will destroy a legacy?" Lucas emerged from the stairwell. "No," he said, "but truth will." Morrow's guards stepped forward. But they weren't guards anymore. Leona's agents dropped the fouet, drew weapons, and surrounded him. "You used her like she was a tool," Lucas said, standing beside Natalie now. "You used me. You used Evelyn." Morrow froze. His mask slipped. "Evelyn?" he whispered. Lucas stepped closer. "You thought her death was buried. But she left something behind. She kept files, names. Yours was the last, for the first time." Morrow looked afraid. Truly afraid. As the agents cuffed him, Natalie leaned in and whispered, "You shouldn't have taught me how to fight." Morrow was escorted out in silence. And in that silence, something shifted. Not just justice. Freedom. Asterisk asterisk. Hours later, the rooftop lounge stood empty. Lucas and Natalie walked through the rain in silence. No cameras, no bodyguards, no headlines, just, "To people who had been to war and lived, we should be terrified right now," Natalie whispered. Lucas looked at her. "Are you?" She shook her head. "I feel clear, like I finally got out of a cage I didn't know I was in." He reached for her hand. "You were never in a cage. You were just waiting for the door to unlock." She smiled, a real one this time. "So what now?" Lucas looked up at the city lights. "Now," he said, "we build something that no one can twist." Together, they disappeared into the night too. Survivors, no longer pawns, but architects of their own ending, or maybe their beginning. 2 months later, the city had changed, but not as much as Natalie had. The headlines that once screamed her downfall had vanished from the feeds. The gossip blogs stopped speculating. The whispers faded like smoke from a fire that had finally burned itself out. Everett Morrow's empire had collapsed like a paper cathedral in a monsoon. Investigations were underway. Soterra Equity Group was dismantled piece by piece, and dozens of names, hidden victims, whistleblowers, silenced allies finally stepped into the light, their stories vindicated by Natalie's courage and Leona's strategy. But even as the dust settled, something in Natalie remained taut beneath. The skin, It was a quiet tension, not born of fear but of focus. She had learned not to wait for peace. She was building it herself. On a Wednesday morning, she stood in the heart of Soho, watching construction crews hoist the first steel beams of what would become her new office. Heartline Strategies, a boutique consulting agency focused on ethical branding and psychological storytelling. It was hers, built from nothing, funded not by Lucas, but from the settlement she won in a counter-lawsuit against Marcus, a battle she'd never expected to win. But once she fought like a soldier who had finally learned her worth, she didn't look away as the beam rose skyward. "It's beautiful," a voice said behind her. Natalie turned. Lucas stood there in jeans, sunglasses, and a quiet smile, holding two coffees. He passed her one without speaking. He didn't need to. In the past few weeks, he had stepped back not from her, but from the spotlight. He had removed himself from press, from stage, from CEO duties, appointed a new executive director, sold his penthouse, bought a small loft across from hers, and most radically of all, he'd started sleeping in. He was no longer a man trying to control every second. He was a man learning to breathe. "Because of her, I was thinking about the photo," she said quietly, eyes still on the structure. Lucas raised a brow. "The one someone took of us. Before the leak, when this all started, I used to hate that image. It made me feel exposed, weak. But now it's different." "How so?" "It was the moment everything broke. But it was also the moment I stopped apologizing for being seen." Lucas's gaze softened. "You never needed to apologize for being seen, Natalie. They were just too small to understand who they were looking at." She smiled. But before she could reply, a sleek black car rolled to a stop at the curb. Leona stepped out, dressed in her usual war black. She approached with that same gliding stride that made her look like she moved through dimensions instead of pavement. "I didn't think you did visits," Natalie said, surprised. "I don't," Leona said, "but I figured this one deserved a little closure." Lucas tilted his head. "What aren't you telling us?" Leona glanced around, then handed Natalie a folder, sealed, heavy, too thick to be casual. Natalie opened it slowly and stopped breathing. Inside were documents stamped confidential, classified memos, redacted pages, and a dossier with her name on it. Not from Sotera, from the Department of Defense. "What is this?" she asked, cold creeping back into her veins. "The full record," Leona said. "The program you were unknowingly part of under Morrow. It wasn't just behavioral. It was predictive modeling, based on trauma response data. They cataloged people who exhibited resilience patterns outside statistical norms." Lucas stepped closer. "She was an experiment," Leona nodded. "A case study that escaped the system, until she re-emerged in your orbit. Then she became divisible to be left alone." Natalie's hands trembled as she flipped through pages detailing everything: her failed college application that was mysteriously rerouted, her first therapy session, even private journal entries she'd written into a digital diary as a teenager. They'd been watching her long before she knew what to fear. "This is sick," Lucas whispered. "It's real," Leona said. "But now it's over. We exposed Sotera. We dismantled Morrow. And with your permission, this file will be destroyed permanently." Natalie closed the folder. "Not yet." "Why?" "Because I want to read every word," she said, eyes like steel. "I want to know exactly who they thought I was before they ever asked me." That night, back in her loft, Natalie lit a fire and read every page. Not as a victim, not as a subject, but as a woman reclaiming her narrative. By midnight, she closed the file. Lucas stirred beside her. "You okay?" "Better than I've ever been," she said. "Even after all that, because of all that." She leaned her head on his shoulder, and they watched the flames dance in the fireplace. "You know what they never accounted for," she whispered. "What?" "That I wouldn't just survive." She turned to him, eyes gleaming. "I'd build something from the ashes." 6 months later, Heartline Strategies opened its doors. Her first client was a non-profit that helped young women rebuild their lives after emotional trauma. Her second was a tech company that had nearly been consumed by shadow stakeholders. By her third, The press started calling her the Phoenix consultant. Lucas didn't mind. He was too busy painting again, cooking, learning to live at half speed. But every morning, he made her coffee, and every night, she whispered thank you, not to him, but to the storm that had once shattered her life, because it hadn't destroyed her. It had revealed her, the real Natalie Hart, not the woman who drank to forget her divorce, but the woman who woke up in a millionaire's bed, looked into the mirror of survival, and built a new beginning with fire in her lungs. And she was just getting started, as checked.